The clock on the warehouse wall showed 11:47 p.m. when David finally punched out. His back ached from lifting boxes all day, and his feet felt like they were walking on broken glass. 16 hours. 2 full shifts back to back. And still, when he checked his wallet, there were only 3 crumpled dollar bills inside. He pulled his jacket tighter against the cold November wind as he walked toward the bus stop. The night air bit at his face, reminding him that winter was coming fast. Too fast. He still hadn't figured out how to pay for winter coats for the kids. Last year's wouldn't fit anymore. Tommy had grown 3 inches, and little Lily's coat had a broken zipper that he couldn't afford to fix. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. David pressed his forehead against the cold window and watched the city lights blur past. Other passengers sat in silence, everyone lost in their own tired thoughts. A woman across from him dozed off, her work badge still hanging around her neck. He recognized that exhaustion. It lived in his bones, too. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Angela. "Kids are asleep. Tommy has a field trip tomorrow, needs $5, sorry." $5. Such a small amount. Once upon a time, $5 meant nothing. A coffee and a sandwich. Now it felt like a mountain he couldn't climb. David closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow. He'd figure it out tomorrow. The bus dropped him off 3 blocks from his apartment building. The neighborhood looked different at night. Darker. The streetlights that actually worked cast long shadows between the buildings. Someone had tagged fresh graffiti on the corner store's metal shutters. A group of young guys stood outside the building next door, their voices carrying in the quiet night. David's building stood 5 stories tall, made of old red brick that had turned almost black in places from years of city dirt. The front door's lock had been broken for months. Nobody bothered to fix things here. The landlord barely showed up to collect rent, let alone make repairs. He climbed the stairs slowly, his legs heavy with exhaustion. First floor. Second floor. The hallway smelled like someone had cooked fish and cigarette smoke mixed together. He heard a baby crying behind one door, a television blaring behind another. Third floor. Someone's music thumped bass through thin walls. By the time David reached the 4th floor landing, he wanted nothing more than to collapse on his sagging couch and sleep for 1,000 years. But something stopped him, a sound, soft and broken, coming from above. Someone was crying. David stood still, his hand on the stairway railing. Every part of him screamed to keep walking, to mind his own business, to finally get some rest. He had enough problems of his own, more than enough. But the sound cut through his exhaustion like a knife through paper. The crying came from the roof access, that rusty door at the top of the stairs that nobody ever used except kids sometimes in summer. David had lived in this building for 8 months and had never even opened it. His feet started moving before his brain caught up. One step, another, up the final flight of stairs to the 5th floor and the roof access. The door handle felt rough and cold under his palm. It creaked loudly as he pushed it open. The night air hit him first, colder up here with nothing to block the wind. The roof was flat, covered in old tar paper and scattered debris, broken bottles, fast food wrappers, an abandoned lawn chair with torn fabric. And there, at the far edge near the low wall that bordered the roof, stood a girl. She couldn't have been more than 18 or 19. Maybe younger. Hard to tell from behind. She wore an oversized hoodie that hung loose on her frame, and jeans that looked like they'd been worn too many days in a row. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. But it was where she stood that made David's heart jump into his throat. She was on the ledge, actually standing on the small wall, her toes right at the edge, nothing between her and a 5-story drop to the concrete below. David's breath caught. For a second, time seemed to freeze. The girl swayed slightly and he could see her arms wrapped around herself, around her middle, and that's when he noticed the curve of her belly. Obvious even in the baggy clothes, she was pregnant. "Please don't," David heard himself say, his voice rough and urgent. The girl jumped at the sound, startled. She turned her head slightly but didn't look back fully. Didn't step down. "Go away," she said, her voice small and hollow. "I can't do that." David took one careful step forward, his hands raised where she could see them. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about me." Her voice cracked. "Just leave me alone. You're right. I don't know you." David took another slow step. "Not too close. Don't scare her." But I know that you're standing on that ledge for a reason, and I know that whatever that reason is, it feels impossible right now." The girl made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Impossible. That's one word for it. What's your name?" David asked softly. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of traffic and the wind rustling old newspapers across the roof. "Rebecca," she finally whispered. "Rebecca. I'm David." He shifted his weight, his tired legs shaking. "I live here."
Fourth floor.
"I just got off work." "Good for you." Her voice dripped with bitterness. "At least you have work. At least you have a home." The words hit David like a punch. He looked at her, really looked at her now. The dirty clothes, the way she held herself, the desperate edge in her voice. "You're homeless," he said quietly. Rebecca's shoulders shook. Brilliant observation. "Want a prize?" David ran a hand over his face. His fingers came away damp. When had he started crying? "How far along are you?" 6 months. Her hand moved to her belly, a gesture so protective and tender it broke something inside David's chest. 6 months and I've got nowhere to go. No family, no money, no future for this baby." Her voice rose, panicked and raw. What kind of mother brings a child into nothing? Into worse than nothing? "A mother who's scared," David said. "A mother who's doing her best in an impossible situation." "My best isn't good enough," Rebecca shouted, her voice echoing across the rooftop. "My best is sleeping in shelters that kick me out at dawn. My best is digging through trash cans for food. My best is standing on this roof because I can't see any other way." David's own struggles flashed through his mind. The empty wallet. The kids needing things he couldn't provide. The constant weight of never having enough, of always falling short, of watching his children go without while he worked himself to death. He thought about his wife, Lisa, and how she'd looked at him with such trust and love, believing he'd always take care of their family. She'd been gone 2 years now, and he still felt like he was failing her every single day. But she'd also taught him something. The night before she died, holding his hand in that hospital bed, she'd made him promise something. "Take care of our babies," she'd whispered. "And remember, David, on the hardest days when you want to give up, you tell yourself, not today. You survived today. Tomorrow can wait." David looked at Rebecca standing on that ledge, this stranger carrying a child into an uncertain world, and he made a decision. "Not today," he said firmly. Rebecca turned to look at him fully for the first time. Her face was young and streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. "What?" "Not today," David repeated, his voice stronger now. "Whatever you're planning to do, whatever decision you think you need to make, I'm asking you, please."
Not today.
Rebecca stared at David like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Not today? That's it? That's your big solution?" "It's not a solution," David admitted, taking another careful step forward. "It's just a start. One day at a time. That's how we survive. I'm tired of just surviving." Rebecca's voice broke. "I've been surviving for 6 months. I'm done." David stopped moving. The wind picked up colder now, and he saw Rebecca shiver. "Can I ask you something? When's the last time you ate?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, confusion crossing her face. "What does that matter?" "Just answer, please." Rebecca looked away, back toward the edge. "Yesterday morning, a church gave out breakfast. Eggs and toast, more than 24 hours. David felt sick. "And where did you sleep last night?" "Why are you asking me this?" Her voice turned defensive. "What difference does it make?" "Because I need you to understand something." David's voice stayed gentle but firm. "Right now you're cold, hungry, exhausted, and scared. Your brain isn't thinking straight. It can't. Not when your body is running on empty. I'm not asking you to decide anything about your future tonight. I'm just asking you to step down from that ledge and let me help you with right now, this moment." "Help me how?" Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "You got a magic wand in your pocket? You gonna conjure up a home and a job and a future for me and this baby?" "No," David said honestly. "I can't do any of that, but I can offer you my couch for tonight, and I've got some leftover rice and chicken in my fridge. It's not much, but it's food." Rebecca turned to look at him fully now, still standing on that ledge but facing him. "You're crazy. You don't know me. I could be dangerous. I could rob you." "You could," David agreed. "But I don't think you will. And even if you did, I don't have anything worth stealing anyway." He gave her a sad smile. $3 in my wallet and a TV that only works if you hit it on the side. For the first time, something flickered across Rebecca's face that wasn't pure despair. Almost a smile. Almost. Why would you do that? She asked quietly. Help a stranger? You clearly have your own problems. David thought about that question. Why was he doing this? He barely had enough to take care of his own kids. Every smart, logical part of his brain told him to walk away, to call the police maybe, but to not get personally involved. 2 years ago, my wife died, he heard himself say. Heart attack. No warning. She was 29 years old. Healthy, or so we thought. One day she was here, the next day she was gone. Left me with 2 kids and more bills than I could count. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. Those first few months I was where you are, not literally on a ledge, but mentally. Emotionally, I was done. I couldn't see how I was going to make it. Couldn't see the point of trying. David's voice grew thick. But people helped me. My sister took the kids when I had to work double shifts. My neighbor. This old lady named Mrs. Patterson, she brought us dinner twice a week even though she was living on Social Security. The guy at the corner store, he'd let me slide when I came up short on milk money. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. None of them had much to give. But they gave anyway. And slowly, day by day, I started to believe I might actually make it. Not because my problems got solved. They didn't. I'm still broke. Still struggling. Still scared most days. But I learned something important. What? Rebecca asked, her voice barely audible. That we're all we've got. People like us, we're all fighting the same fight. And the only way any of us make it is if we help each other, even when it doesn't make sense. Even when we've got nothing to give. David held out his hand. So I'm asking you again, please step down. Let me help you with tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out tomorrow. Rebecca's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't understand why you care. Because somebody cared about me when I needed it most. And because that baby you're carrying deserves a chance. And so do you. The words hung in the cold night air. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. A dog barked. Life continued all around them. Indifferent to this moment on the rooftop. Rebecca's shoulders started to shake. She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, around her belly. I'm so scared, she whispered. I know, David said softly. Me too, every single day. But we're scared together now, okay? You're not alone anymore. Something in Rebecca seemed to break then. The rigid determination that had been holding her together crumbled. She swayed on the ledge and David's heart stopped. Rebecca, look at me. His voice came out sharp with fear. Look at me, not down. At me, her eyes snapped to his face. That's good. Keep looking at me. Now I need you to take my hand. Can you do that? Rebecca's hand trembled as she reached out. It seemed to take forever, that small distance between them. David stretched as far as he could without making any sudden movements. His fingertips brushed hers. Then their hands connected and he gripped tight. I've got you. I'm not letting go. Now step down. Toward me, slow. Rebecca moved her foot, testing her weight. For a horrible second, David thought she might fall backward over the edge. His grip tightened until his knuckles went white. Then her foot found solid roof and she stepped down off the ledge. The moment both her feet hit the roof, Rebecca collapsed. David barely caught her before she hit the ground. She folded into herself, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. He knelt on the dirty rooftop, holding the stranger while she cried and felt his own tears fall freely. It's okay, he murmured, though nothing was really okay. You're safe now. I've got you. They stayed like that for a long time. David lost track of how many minutes passed. His knees hurt from kneeling on the rough surface. The cold seeped through his jacket. But he didn't move. Didn't let go. When Rebecca's sobs finally quieted to shaky breath, she pulled back slightly. Her face was blotchy and swollen, her eyes red. I don't even know you. Then we'll get to know each other, David said simply. Starting with getting you inside where it's warm. My apartment's not much, but it's better than up here. Rebecca nodded, exhausted. David helped her to her feet, keeping a supportive hand on her arm. She moved slowly, heavily, like someone who'd been carrying an impossible weight for too long. They walked to the roof access door together. Before they went through, Rebecca stopped and looked back at the ledge. I really was gonna do it, she said quietly. If you hadn't come up here, but I did, David interrupted gently. And you didn't, that's what matters now. Going down the stairs took twice as long as coming up. Rebecca had to stop and rest on the third-floor landing, breathing hard. David noticed how thin she was everywhere except her belly, how her jeans were held up with a piece of rope instead of a belt, how her sneakers had holes in them. When they finally reached his apartment on the 4th floor, David unlocked the door and pushed it open. The living room was tiny and cramped, furniture that had seen better days, toys scattered on the floor. But it was warm, and it was shelter. Rebecca stood in the doorway, hesitating. "Come on in," David said. "Welcome to my palace." She stepped inside, and he closed the door behind them. Whatever happened next, whatever impossible challenges tomorrow would bring, at least tonight she wouldn't face them alone. Neither of them would. "Not today," David said again, more to himself than to her. A promise, a prayer, a tiny act of defiance against a world that took too much from people who had too little. Rebecca looked at him, something like hope flickering in her tired eyes. "Not today," she repeated softly. David flipped on the light switch and immediately wished he hadn't. The apartment looked worse in the harsh fluorescent glow. The couch had a permanent sag in the middle where he slept every night. The coffee table was covered in overdue bills and coloring books. A basket of unfolded laundry sat in the corner. This was his life, exposed under unforgiving light. Rebecca didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and was just too tired to care. She stood in the middle of the small living room, swaying slightly on her feet. "Sit," David said, gesturing to the couch. "Please, before you fall over." She lowered herself onto the cushions slowly, like her body hurt. Probably did. David had slept on the streets for 3 nights once, years ago, before Lisa. He remembered how everything ached after sleeping on concrete. "Give me a minute. I'll heat up some food." He moved to the tiny kitchen, separated from the living room by a counter with a chipped laminate top. The refrigerator hummed loudly when he opened it. Inside sat a container of leftover chicken and rice from 2 days ago, half a gallon of milk and some baby carrots in a plastic bag. He dumped the container into a pot and turned on the stove. While the food heated, he grabbed a clean glass and filled it with water. When he turned around, Rebecca had her eyes closed, her head resting against the back of the couch. "Here," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Drink this first." Her eyes opened. She took the glass with both hands like it was something precious and drank it all without stopping. When she finished, she looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I was really thirsty. Don't apologize." "Want more?" She nodded. David refilled the glass twice more before she finally slowed down. The rice was warm now, steaming in the pot. He scooped it into a bowl, found a clean spoon, and brought it to her. "It's not fancy. Probably a little dry, but it's something." Rebecca took the bowl, and for a second she just stared at it. Then she started eating. Not fast, but steady, like someone who'd learned not to waste a single bite. David watched her and felt his chest tighten. When was the last time someone had fed his own kids? Oh, right, his sister. Angela always made sure they ate, even when he couldn't. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick text. "Got held up. Everything okay?" Angela's response came fast. "Fine, kids sleeping. Take your time." Thank God for her. David didn't know what he'd do without his sister. "This is really good," Rebecca said quietly, scraping the last bits from the bowl. "Thank you. You want more?" "There's a little left." She hesitated, and he could see her fighting between hunger and pride. "Hunger won." She nodded. David brought her the rest, and she ate that too. When she finally set the empty bowl on the coffee table, some of the hollowness had left her eyes. "Better?" he asked. "Yeah, a lot better." She pulled the sleeves of her hoodie over her hands. "I didn't realize how hungry I was." "You stopped noticing after a while." David sat down in the worn armchair across from her. "How long have you been on the streets?" 2 months. Maybe closer to 3 now. Lost track." Rebecca stared at her hands. "My parents kicked me out when they found out I was pregnant. Said I'd shamed the family. Boyfriend took off the same day. Guess he wasn't ready to be a dad." The bitterness in her voice could have cut glass. "What about friends?" "Had a friend let me crash on her couch for a week. But her roommate complained. Said I was making the place smell bad." Rebecca's voice dropped. "Maybe I was. Hard to stay clean when you're living like this. Shelters only let you shower every few days. Some not even that." David felt anger rise in his chest. Not at Rebecca. At the world. At how easy it was to fall through the cracks. At how quickly people became invisible once they hit the streets. "I tried to keep my job at the diner," Rebecca continued. "But morning sickness was bad. Really bad. I kept having to run to the bathroom. My boss said I was unreliable, fired me on the spot, and once you lose your job, everything else falls apart fast. Couldn't pay for the room I was renting. Couldn't afford a phone, couldn't apply for new jobs. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. I know that feeling, David said quietly. Different circumstances, but I know it. After Lisa died, the medical bills buried me. Even with insurance, we owed thousands. Collection agencies calling day and night, had to declare bankruptcy, lost our apartment, my credits destroyed. That's why I'm in this place. It's the only landlord who'd rent to me without a credit check or references. They sat in silence for a moment. Two people who understood what it meant to have the world push you down and keep you there. The baby, Rebecca said suddenly, her hand moving to her stomach. I feel her move sometimes, kicks and rolls, and every time she does, I think about what kind of life she's gonna have, what kind of mother I'm gonna be. And her voice cracked. How do I bring a baby into this? How do I feed her when I can't feed myself? Where do we sleep? What happens when it's winter and we're on the streets? David leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I don't have easy answers, I wish I did. But I know this. You're stronger than you think. You've survived 2 months on the streets while pregnant. That takes more courage than most people have in their whole lives. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like desperation. Sometimes those are the same thing. David ran a hand through his hair. Look, here's what I know. Tomorrow morning I'm going to call someone. A friend of mine. Her name's Patricia. She runs a resource center for women in crisis. She helps with housing, job training, medical care, all that stuff. Rebecca's eyes widened. I've been to places like that. They all have waiting lists. Months long. Patricia's different. She knows how to cut through red tape. And if I tell her your situation, she'll make something happen. I trust her. David pulled out his phone. It's too late to call now, but first thing in the morning, I promise. Why are you doing this? Rebecca asked again, searching his face. You don't owe me anything. David thought about that. Really thought about it. You know what my wife said to me once? We were watching the news, some story about homeless people, and she said that every person on the street is somebody's child, somebody's brother or sister, somebody who matters. She said that could be us someday, and she hoped if it ever was, someone would show us kindness. His eyes burned with unshed tears. 6 months after she said that, she was gone, and a year after that, I was so close to being on those streets myself. I was standing in line at a food bank with my kids, and this woman in front of me turned around and smiled. Just smiled. This warm, genuine smile. And she said, "Rough day?" And I almost broke down right there. Because yeah, it was a rough day, a rough month, a rough year. But that smile reminded me I was still human, still worthy of kindness. Rebecca wiped her eyes with her sleeve. So that's why, David said. Because you're somebody. Because that baby is somebody. And because if we don't take care of each other, who will? The apartment fell quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant sounds from neighboring units. Someone's TV, water running through old pipes, normal sounds, safe sounds. Rebecca shifted on the couch, pulling her legs up. Can I really stay here tonight? Yeah. The couch is yours. I'll sleep in the chair. Won't be the first time. I don't want to take your bed. This is my bed, David said, patting the armchair. The kids have the only bedroom. I sleep out here. Rebecca looked around the small apartment with fresh eyes. Understanding dawned on her face. You gave them the bedroom. Of course I did. They're kids. They need space, a door they can close, some privacy. David shrugged like it was nothing, though it wasn't. His back reminded him every morning that sleeping in a chair wasn't sustainable. You're a good dad. The words hit David harder than he expected. Some days he felt like the worst dad in the world. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, try. He found a blanket in the laundry basket, relatively clean, and handed it to Rebecca. It's not much, but it'll keep you warm. She took it, holding it close. It's perfect, thank you. David settled into his chair, suddenly aware of how tired he was. Bone tired, soul tired. But also something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. David? Rebecca's voice was sleepy. Yeah? Thank you. For saying not today. For meaning it. He smiled in the darkness. We both said it, remember? We're in this together now. Within minutes, he heard her breathing deepen into sleep. David stayed awake a while longer, thinking about tomorrow. About phone calls he needed to make. About how he'd figure out breakfast for 4 people instead of 3. About all the ways this could go wrong. But also about how, for one night, he'd made a difference. Saved a life. Maybe 2 lives. Not today, he thought again. Not today. David woke to the sound of small feet running across the floor. His neck ached from sleeping in the chair, and for a confused second he forgot why he was there instead of on the couch. Then he remembered. Rebecca. He opened his eyes to find his son Tommy standing frozen in the doorway, staring at the stranger asleep on their couch. The boy's eyes were wide with confusion. Dad? Tommy whispered. Who's that? David untangled himself from the chair and walked quickly to his son, putting a finger to his lips. He guided Tommy into the small bedroom where his daughter Lily was still asleep, her dark curls spread across the pillow. Her name's Rebecca, David said quietly, closing the door halfway. She needed help last night. She's going to stay with us for a little while. Tommy's 8-year-old brain processed this information. Like when Aunt Angela stays over? Sort of. But Rebecca doesn't have anywhere else to go. She's homeless. Oh. Tommy's expression turned serious. They'd talked about homelessness before. Tommy had asked questions after seeing people on the streets downtown. Is she sick? No, buddy. Just going through a really hard time. And she's pregnant. She's gonna have a baby. Tommy's eyes got even wider. A baby? That's cool. When? In a few months, I think. David ran his hand over his face, feeling the stubble there. Listen, I need you to be really kind to her, okay? And quiet this morning. Let her sleep. Okay, Dad. Tommy nodded solemnly, then his face fell. Dad, I need $5 for my field trip today. Aunt Angela said to remind you. The field trip. David had forgotten in all the chaos of last night. He pulled out his wallet and looked at those 3 crumpled bills. $3, not 5. I'll figure it out, okay? Give me a few minutes. He left Tommy getting dressed and went to check on Lily. His daughter was awake now, rubbing her eyes. At 6 years old, she was usually shy around new people. This was going to be interesting. Morning, sweetheart, David whispered. We have a guest, a lady named Rebecca, sleeping on the couch. Can you be extra quiet? Lily nodded, always eager to please. Is she nice? Very nice. She just needs some help right now. In the kitchen, David took inventory. 2 eggs. Enough bread for maybe 3 pieces of toast. The baby carrots. Half a gallon of milk. Not enough for 4 people to have a real breakfast. Definitely not enough for a pregnant woman who'd barely eaten in days. He did some mental math. If he gave the kids cereal with milk, used 1 egg for Rebecca, and skipped breakfast himself, it could work. His stomach growled in protest, but he ignored it. Wouldn't be the first time. David was pouring cereal into bowls when Rebecca stirred on the couch. She sat up slowly, looking around with confusion until her eyes landed on him. Recognition and relief crossed her face. Morning, David said softly. How'd you sleep? Better than I have in months. Rebecca's voice was rough from sleep. Then, she noticed the kids' bedroom door open and Tommy peeking out. She tensed. You have kids, I didn't know, I shouldn't be here. It's fine, they know you're here. It's okay. David waved Tommy over. Tommy, come say good morning to Rebecca. The boy approached cautiously. Hi, my dad says you're having a baby. Rebecca looked surprised, then a small smile appeared. Yeah, in about 3 months. That's cool. Is it a boy or a girl? A girl, I think, not completely sure. Lily appeared in the doorway now, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She stared at Rebecca with big, curious eyes but stayed quiet. "And that's Lily," David said. "She's a little shy." "Hi, Lily," Rebecca said gently. "I like your rabbit." Lily hugged the stuffed animal tighter, but smiled a tiny smile. David served the kids their cereal at the small kitchen table and scrambled the egg for Rebecca. It looked pathetic on the plate, one small egg and a piece of toast, but it was what he had. "This is too much," Rebecca protested when he handed her the plate. "The kids need to eat more than this. I can skip breakfast." "No, you can't. You're eating for two." "They're fine." They had cereal. David grabbed a baby carrot for himself and chomped on it, trying to look like he wasn't hungry at all. Rebecca ate slowly, and David could tell she knew what he'd done. Given up his portion. But she didn't argue. The baby needed food more than his pride needed preserving. After breakfast, David got the kids ready for school while Rebecca offered to wash the dishes. It felt strange having someone else in his space, helping with normal tasks. Strange, but not bad. "Tommy needs $5 for a field trip," David told Rebecca as she dried the last plate. "And I've got 3, so I need to figure something out." "I could watch them," Rebecca offered. "While you work today? I mean, if you trust me. Save you whatever you pay for childcare." David looked at her, surprised. "I don't pay for childcare. My sister watches them after school. But I work until 6. That's a long time to ask. I don't have anywhere else to be. And honestly, being around kids sounds nice. Normal. Better than sitting here alone all day." Before David could respond, his phone rang. His sister Angela. "Hey, Ang." "David, I'm so sorry. I can't pick up the kids today. My boss just called an emergency shift. I tried to say no, but they said if I don't come in, I might lose my job." David's stomach dropped. He needed this day to go smoothly. Needed to work his full shift to make enough for groceries. And now this. "It's okay. I'll figure something out. I'm really sorry. I know you're counting on me." After he hung up, Rebecca was watching him. "Bad news? My sister can't watch the kids after school. She's my backup for everything." David pressed his palms against his eyes. "I'll have to leave work early. Which means less money. Which means less food. It's always something. I meant what I said. I can watch them. I'm good with kids. I used to babysit all the time before everything fell apart." David wanted to say yes, desperately needed to say yes, but letting a stranger watch his children, even a stranger he'd saved from a rooftop? As if reading his mind, Rebecca said, "I know you don't know me well. I get it. But David, you saved my life last night. Literally saved my life. You think I'd do anything to hurt your kids? You think I'd betray that trust?" She had a point. And honestly, what choice did he have? Call in sick and lose a day's pay? Lose his job entirely? "Okay," he said finally. "But I'm calling to check in. Multiple times. Call as much as you want." David went to his bedroom closet and pulled out an old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside was his emergency fund. $73 in wrinkled bills, saved $1 or $2 at a time over months. Money he'd been saving in case the heat got shut off or one of the kids got sick. He pulled out a $5 bill and added it to the 3 in his wallet. $8. Enough for Tommy's field trip and maybe a cheap lunch for himself. At the door, before leaving for work, David knelt down to Tommy and Lily's level. "Rebecca's going to pick you up from school today and stay with you until I get home. You listen to her, okay? Treat her with respect." "Okay, Dad," they chorused. He looked at Rebecca, this young woman who'd been ready to end her life just hours ago, now standing in his apartment about to watch his most precious treasures. "You have my number. Anything happens, anything at all, you call me. I will. We'll be fine. I promise." David headed to work with a knot in his stomach, but he'd made it 3 steps out of the building when he stopped. Went back, knocked on his own door. Rebecca opened it, looking worried. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. He paused. "This morning I need to call Patricia, my friend at the resource center. Can you be ready to talk to her? Tell her your situation?" Hope flickered across Rebecca's face. "Really? You think she can help?" "I know she can. She's helped people in worse situations. Trust me." "I trust you," Rebecca said simply. Those 3 words hit David square in the chest. After everything, after being let down by everyone, she trusted him. A stranger who'd found her on a rooftop. I'll call her from work. Be ready for her call. This time when David left, he felt lighter somehow. Yes, everything was still hard. Yes, he'd just given a stranger access to his home and kids. Yes, he was down to $68 in his emergency fund. But something was shifting. On the bus to work, David pulled out his phone and typed a message in a neighborhood group he barely participated in. His hands shook as he wrote it. Hi everyone. I'm helping a young pregnant woman who's homeless. She's trying to get back on her feet. If anyone has baby items they're not using, or maternity clothes, or knows of any job opportunities, please let me know. Anything helps. He hesitated before hitting send. Asking for help had never been easy. Pride was a hard thing to swallow. But this wasn't about him anymore. He pressed send. Within 5 minutes, his phone started buzzing with responses. And by the time the bus reached his stop, David was reading through offers of help that brought tears to his eyes. A woman had a crib she'd give away for free. Another had bags of baby clothes from her daughter who'd outgrown them. Someone else knew a store owner looking for part-time help. Message after message. Strangers helping strangers. Maybe, David thought as he walked into the warehouse, maybe they'd all make it through this after all, one day at a time together. Not today, he thought, and maybe, just maybe, not tomorrow either. 3 months later, David stood in the community center's main hall, his hands shaking slightly as he looked at the crowd. He'd never been comfortable speaking in public. Never imagined he'd be standing here, about to tell his story to 50 strangers. Patricia stood beside him, giving him an encouraging nod. The woman had become a friend over these past months, helping not just Rebecca but his own family too. She'd connected him with a food bank that didn't make him feel ashamed, found a program that helped with the kids' school supplies, small things that made a massive difference. You don't have to do this, Patricia whispered. I can tell the story if you want, but David shook his head. This story needed to be told by the people who lived it. He stepped up to the microphone. Hi, my name's David, and I'm not good at speeches, so bear with me. His voice echoed through the room. 3 months ago, I was at the end of my rope. Single dad, 2 jobs that barely paid enough to keep the lights on. Every day was a battle just to survive. He saw people nodding. They understood. This crowd wasn't here for entertainment. They were here because they'd lived these struggles too. One night I came home after a 16-hour shift. Exhausted, broke, ready to just collapse. But I heard someone crying on the roof of my building, and even though every part of me wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. I went up there and found a young woman named Rebecca. She was 19, 6 months pregnant, homeless, and standing on the ledge ready to jump. The room went completely silent. I didn't have answers for her, didn't have money or solutions or any way to fix her problems. All I had were 2 words. Not today. David's voice cracked. I asked her to give me one more day, just one. To not make any permanent decisions when she was cold and hungry and scared. He paused, gathering himself. Rebecca stepped down from that ledge, and I brought her to my tiny apartment, fed her the last of my food, let her sleep on my couch, and the next morning I did something I'd never done before. I asked for help. Posted in a neighborhood group about this stranger who needed support. David smiled, remembering. And you know what happened? People showed up. Complete strangers offering baby clothes, furniture, job leads. The owner of the grocery store down the street gave Rebecca a job. Part-time at first, then full-time when he saw how hard she worked. A woman from the church donated a crib. Another family gave us their old stroller. One person at a time, our community came together. Movement at the back of the room caught his attention. Rebecca walked in, pushing a stroller, and David's heart swelled. She was supposed to be resting after giving birth 2 weeks ago, but she'd insisted on coming. That's Rebecca, David said, pointing, and that's her daughter, Hope. The crowd turned and several people started clapping. Rebecca's face turned red, but she smiled. Rebecca's been living in transitional housing for 2 months now. David continued. She's got a job, a support system, a future. But here's the thing. She didn't just take help. She gave it too. When she moved into her place, she started volunteering at the shelter where she'd stayed, helping other women who were where she used to be, showing them that there's a way forward. Rebecca made her way to the front, and Patricia helped her bring the stroller up onto the small stage. The baby was asleep, wrapped in a soft pink blanket that David's daughter Lily had picked out. And she changed my life too, David said, his voice thick with emotion. See, I'd been so focused on my own problems, so buried in my own struggle, that I'd forgotten something important. We're not meant to do this alone. Any of this. We need each other. He looked out at the faces in the crowd, some crying, some nodding, all listening. After helping Rebecca, I realized I didn't have to be ashamed of needing help. I reached out to programs I'd been too proud to access before. Got assistance with rent, food support. Patricia here helped me find a better paying job with normal hours. And my kids? They learned something valuable too. They learned that kindness matters, that helping others isn't about having a lot. It's about giving what you can. Tommy and Lily sat in the front row with David's sister Angela. Tommy was holding a sign he'd made himself that said, "Not today," in big colorful letters. Lily clutched her rabbit and smiled at her dad. The crazy thing is, David said, I thought I was saving Rebecca that night. But really, she saved me. She reminded me why it's worth fighting through the hard days. She reminded me that community matters, that we're stronger together than we are alone. Patricia stepped forward then, taking the microphone. David and Rebecca's story is why we started the Not Today project. It's a crisis support network for people in our community who are struggling. Whether you're facing homelessness, mental health challenges, food insecurity, or you're just at the end of your rope, we're here to help. No judgment, no bureaucracy, just neighbors helping neighbors. She gestured to a table at the side of the room. We have information packets about our services. We're looking for volunteers, donations, and most importantly, we're looking for people who need help. If that's you, please don't wait. Please don't let pride or shame stop you from reaching out. Rebecca stepped up to the microphone then, adjusting it down for her shorter height. I didn't plan to speak today, she said softly, but I need to say something. 3 months ago, I didn't want to be alive. I thought my life was worthless, that my baby would be better off never being born than being born to someone like me. And then David said 2 words that changed everything. She looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully. Not today. Such simple words. But they gave me permission to take things one day at a time, to not solve everything at once, to just survive today and worry about tomorrow when it came. Her voice grew stronger. And you know what? I survived today, and then the next day, and the next. And each day got a little easier, because people cared, strangers who became friends. A community that refused to let me fall. Rebecca wiped her eyes. If you're struggling right now, if you feel like you're drowning, if you think there's no way out, I'm asking you the same thing David asked me. Not today. Don't give up today. Reach out. Let us help. Because I promise you, there are people who care. There are people who want to help. You just have to let them. The applause started slowly, then built until the whole room was standing. David wrapped Rebecca in a hug and she hugged him back tightly. After the event, people swarmed them. Some wanting to volunteer, some wanting to share their own stories, some asking for help themselves. Patricia and her team took names and numbers, connecting people with resources, building networks of support. An older man approached David, tears in his eyes. I lost my job 6 months ago. Been too ashamed to tell anyone. Too proud to ask for help. Been thinking about giving up. But after hearing your story, I think maybe I can try one more day. David gripped the man's hand. That's all we're asking. One more day, and we'll help you figure out the rest. As the crowd thinned, David sat with his kids, Rebecca and baby Hope. Tommy was making funny faces at the baby, trying to make her smile. Lily was gently touching Hope's tiny hand with one finger. She's so small, Lily whispered in awe. You were that small once, David told her. Really? Really? Rebecca looked at David over the baby's head. Thank you. I know I've said it 1,000 times, but thank you. For seeing me. For not walking away. Thank you, David replied. For trusting me. For fighting through. For reminding me what matters. Angela came over and sat beside them.
You know what Mom would say if she could see you now?
David looked at his sister. What? She'd say she's proud. That you're doing exactly what she taught us. Taking care of people. Building community. Making the world a little less lonely. David thought about his mother. Gone now for 5 years. She'd raised them in poverty too. But she'd always found ways to help neighbors. To share what little they had. He'd forgotten those lessons somewhere along the way. Lost them in his own struggles. Rebecca had helped him find them again. As they walked out of the community center into the evening air, Hope started to fuss. Rebecca pulled her from the stroller and held her close, swaying gently. The baby quieted immediately. "You're a natural," David said. "I'm learning." "One day at a time," Rebecca smiled. "Just like everything else." Tommy grabbed David's hand on one side, Lily on the other. His sister walked beside them, Rebecca and Hope a step behind. This makeshift family born from crisis and compassion. David's phone buzzed. A text from the neighborhood group. Someone asking about the Not Today project. Someone else offering to donate furniture. Another person saying they needed help and didn't know where to turn. He'd respond later. Right now he wanted to be present for this moment. This collection of people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something better together. "Dad?" Tommy asked. "Are we going to be okay?" David thought about that question. Really thought about it. Were they okay? They still struggled. Money was still tight. Life was still hard. But they weren't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. "Yeah, buddy," David said. "We're going to be okay. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, one day at a time." "Not today," Lily said solemnly, like she was practicing the words. David laughed and squeezed her hand. "Exactly, sweetheart. Not today." And as they walked home together through the evening streets, David felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, honest hope that the future might actually be brighter than the past. That kindness mattered. That community mattered. That they all mattered, one day at a time, together. That's how they'd make it. Not today, he thought with a smile, and not ever again.